Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this narration of the web series The Nature of Predators. If you are new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Memory transcription subject, Captain Soblin, United Nations Fleet Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, November 27th, 2136. The United Nations extended me an official plea deal, which my lawyer was quick to secure. I was to serve with the Terran military for at least 5 years, as penance for my debt. The fact was, someone of my sickening proclivities was useful to them, and I knew a lot about Federation ships. Outlining a species' military tendencies and technological weaknesses was my specialty. The humans had cobbled together a fleet from the offerings that trickled in from dozens of planet states. The Harkin and Tillfish surrendered their assets and sent aid shipments as a peace offering. The Predators were still deliberating what to do with them. However, neutral parties contributed the bulk of the vessels, along with a few old allies. The Terrans rushed to integration of millions of Federation servicemen into their ranks. After a week of anti-insect training, most aliens aboard the vessel still acclimatizing to Predators. Ambitious as ever, the Terrans launched a defensive and offensive operation simultaneously. But in fairness to the overzealous military, it was a mercy that they diverted resources to bail out the Mazets. The Kolshian-led force marching on their homeworld, Koa, was enough to steamroll any fortifications. My role was as the resident expert on Federation tactics. I knew the terrain and local sensitivities better than any primate allies. Captain Monahan scanned the bridge with her observant eyes. All hands are on deck. FTL disruptors are still in full force, so we're going in the old-fashioned way. ET8 to Koa, less than 30 minutes. Settle in at the sensor station, Soblin. I'd worked with just about every race over the years. Now we were setting sail to fight people I once thought friends. It didn't put a good feeling in my stomach, but the masterminds needed to answer for their crimes. The Kolshians and the Farsul were the ones who set the Predator hatred in motion. They bore responsibility for what had transpired on Earth. "I don't belong with humans, ma'am," came my subdued reply. "Your crew deserves better. I'm surprised that you requested me back. Frankly, you're an idiot in many ways, but you know a thing or two about alien tactics. Having someone who can identify anomalies and ship types in real time is useful. Glad I can do something right." Cut the crap. Romero and Harris were brought aboard for your welfare. They're waiting for you, yes, with other people. Don't be shy. Get your ass to your post. It took a colossal effort to walk across the aisle and settle in at the weapons post. Samantha was sipping at a steaming drink and bore a vacant look of someone whose mind was elsewhere. Carlos was focused on the battle readout, barely acknowledging my stare. I wondered how the human came to terms with their monstrous side, when I couldn't just get past mine. Sapiens aren't supposed to be like us. Who the feck am I now? My gaze drifted to the unfamiliar human who was leading the weapons station. This male was one of the tallest humans I'd seen, with a few inches even on Carlos. The Predator sported lean muscles across his upper body and had coarse hair the color of sand. A Yodel was seated alongside the Terran, reviewing the button functionality. "Hello," I offered. Binocular eyes darted over to me, a rich blue. "I was told that we had a Gojid here. I served on the Cradle, actually, with one of the few Venlil that joined us. I would have never guessed you guys were omnivores, too." The Terrans were the only species that didn't think we were freaks after the broadcast. They welcomed the news of past omnivores, rejoiced that they weren't alone in their preferences. But while I'd come around to humanity's cause, the last thing I wanted to be was a predator. It was a lowly status, full of grisly practices and animalism. How could I be the same class as the Arxol? Carlos scoffed. "Don't bring that up. They were raised and from birth to hate meat-eaters. Told there was nothing worse. Our buddy here had a rough time of it." "Right, my bad," the stranger agreed. "Anyhow, I'm Tyler Cardona, and this is my partner from Yodel Exchange Program, Onzo. The last month has been pretty crap, but I was stoked to get accepted to that initiative." Onzo flicked his reddish ears. Tyler wouldn't even eat around me when we first met. It was like he was scared to talk about Earth. You didn't see how the Venlil I was with reacted. Slanek, that was his name. He puked his guts out and had a breakdown from a few beef crumbles in my MRE. My spines bristled in alarm as the name Slanek reached my ears. It was as though someone dumped a bucket of cold ice water on my head. If this Tyler knew the Vendel, he likely knew Marcel by extension. The redhead human had mentioned he'd served on the Cradle. and spoke about the tragedies that unfolded. Protector. It was just my luck to get serving under one of his buddies. I was fortunate that Tyler didn't realize who I was. For this particular human, my crimes were a personal attack on someone he cared about. I shot Sam and Carlos a pleading look, imploring them to not pipe up. Perhaps it was necessary to ask Captain Monahan for a transfer, although her reaction would be one of displeasure. But simply, my identity could interfere with station performance if it came to light. By the way, isn't this a sick ride? I couldn't pass up a chance to serve on one of the few human craft left in service. The sand-haired Terran continued, giving the desk an enthusiastic snap. Captain requested me because I'm an expert in fear suppression program. You hear that, Onso? Expert. Put your yapping. Will you let the newcomer get a word in? What's your name, Gojit? Onso asked. I narrowed my eyes. Don't have one. Tyler snorted. Of course you do. Don't make me pry it out of your buddies. What's your problem? My problem is that you talk too much. We're about to go into battle. Even Onso notices that you can't keep a lid on it. So kindly shut the fuck up. The smile vanished from the sensor officer's face, and he shot his yodel pal an incredulous look. His features took on a scowl, and he turned back to me. I squirmed under his paralyzing glare, knowing my words were too harsh. It wasn't my intent to offend the big guy, but opening up to him wasn't an option. It wasn't wise to advertise my identity to humans in general, let alone a packmate of Marcel. A dangerous growl rumbled in his throat. I'm an officer of the ship. You don't get to speak to me like that. Hey, Tyler, I know he's being an ass. He takes a while to open up to humans. Carlos jumped in. Please cut him a break this once. Just let him settle in first and warm up to you in his own time. Whatever. But it better not happen again. You want all work, no play? Start analyzing the subspace data and plotting intercept vectors. Give me a list of potential targets as soon as the enemies are in sight. I lowered my eyes. Yes, sir. Samantha sipped at a bean drink, momentary interest in her eyes. The female and human and I had been getting along better since Seleni's rescue. All the same, I wondered if she'd turn me in to Tyler down the line. After this battle, I had to get myself transferred to a different station. Weapons would be more up my alley anyways. With a great deal of effort, I zeroed in on the sensor data. The subspace trails that we could detect were faint, coming from the direction of Alpha. We had assumed the enemy would beat us here by a few hours. Visual contact was needed to assess the drive signatures and determine how many species we were up against. I worried just how far the Federation would go with their organization fracturing. The Massics needed to hold out a little longer. I cleared my throat. No sign of friendly activity. The fact that there's no outbound trails suggests the skirmish is ongoing. Good news. Why is that? Tyler asked in a gruff voice. The Federation would have sent word home if they achieved victory. We need to get a comm link with the Massics. Make sure their planetary defenses don't start picking us off. The census officer relayed the message to Captain Monahan, who nodded in agreement. She issued orders from the Fisan at the comms station, which was where most prey had been relegated. The alien crew members were doing their jobs seamlessly so far, but humans were the best suited for high-stress roles. Nobody else had the ability to block out fear, like it wasn't even there. Onso tampered with the viewport setting, straining one of his retrograde legs. The yodel looked more comfortable with the technology than I expected. Perhaps Tyler had taught him the modern ways, somehow. The blonde human hadn't shown any concern with leaving a primate novice unattended. It was a wonder those two found any common ground for friendship. I pored over the subspace trails and fed the data into the computer for analysis. The AI took several seconds to extrapolate optimal paths. Once I input Koa as the primary target, it was likely Federation would take a conservative approach, in case of a human ambush. Predators were predictable, but the same could be said of prey, the normal races. That meant that we might be able to spot a lookout ship. If we can take them out before they relay useful data, that's ideal. The less information the enemy has, the better. I leaned over to Onzo. Search for recon ships on the viewport. We want to take out their eyes. Apologize to Tyler first, the yodel barked. This is not a time for petty squabbles. We're soldiers, not daycare workers. Do you want to lose ships and lives because you're mad at me? I don't want to work with you. The feeling is mutual. Now isn't the time to disrupt the captain. But I'll request a transfer when this is over. We have to work together this once, because what you want and what you get are two different things. Start the fucking scan already, if you know how. The uplift bared his teeth, and I noted the fur on his hackles rising. He saw I had no problem with my human gods, which suggested my issue with his friend was personal. Truth be told, every part of me wanted to give Tyler a rambling apology for all of my transgressions. If he wanted a piece of me, I'd be happy to let him throw some well-placed haymakers. But at this moment, coming clean was the worst thing to do. It would interfere with the mission. Tyler narrowed his eyes again. Is there a problem? Again? The Gojit thinks he can order me around. He's insufferable, Answer grumbled. Samantha exhaled a flustered breath. He only said to search for a scout ship. The feds will take more caution than usual, I imagine. If he's giving solid advice, go with it, the tall officer said. Onzo, I know you're sticking up for me, but there's too much at stake to be arguing now. I can look out for myself, okay? The Yodel pinned his ears back before shifting the viewport at maximum magnification. Idle asteroids greeted us from the circumstellar disk, but nothing was of particular interest. In the meantime, our comm station had established contact with the Mazics. They sounded uncharacteristically happy to be on the line with a human fleet. Carlos leaned close to my ear. Could you just make up a name, man? What about Vinny? I scrunched my nose with distaste, ignoring his suggestion. That would just leave Tyler infuriated that I deceived him. When someone called me by my real name. Anso released an excited yip beside us and brought our small shuttle into focus. Its emissions were too minuscule to appear on sensors without someone telling the computer where to look. Our ship's weapons revved to life, poised to decimate the first enemy contact. The humans had a forethought to charge a railgun in transit. There were no haphazard actions in this fleet. Captain Monahan barely finished giving the kill order before the bolt of death streaked across the sky. The Predators were dialed in for this mission, mechanical in their calculation. There were no cheers on the bridge as the enemy scout erupted into fiery shrapnel. The Terrans were itching to fight, but the thrill of combat was lost with Earth. Perhaps the somberness was because they didn't want to fail to defend Koa and relive what happened to their own home. Human empathy often was more of a nuisance to them than a boon. It's just a few minutes before the entire Federation fleet is in view. Breathe through the belt, and soon it's showtime. Samantha sucked in a sharp breath. There! That faint emerald dot must be Koa. My gaze shifted to the viewport. The sharp-eyed human must have distinguished the planet from the bountiful stars around us. White blips flashed near it, which was signs of the Mazics and Federation exchanging fire. Donating several ship's units to Earth's crusade had depleted local resources. It was likely the friendlies were stalling for time, in the hopes of a Predator rescue. The fact that the Mazics withstood the volume of enemies we saw in transit was miraculous. The humans knew time was of the essence. Captain Monahan ordered navigation to push the throttle past recommended output. Our fleet surged ahead, stone-colored armors rattling from the acceleration. I turned back to my data feed and watched as new information trickled in. The computer continued tagging friendlies while racking up separate tallies of enemies. The number of hostiles stalled around 2,000, whereas the estimate I pulled from subspace readings was 5 times that number. The machine wasn't cutting any more context though, so it must be mistaken. The Mazics weren't martial geniuses. They couldn't have taken down that many ships. Also, there wasn't enough debris detected for that many casualties. Where are the rest of the Federation ships? Answer, don't tell me you applied sensor filters by mistake, I grumbled. The Yodel snarled with indignation. There are no filters on, dumbass. The ships are there, on your readout, accounted for. Tyler pursed his lips. What do you mean by the rest of them? The level of overlap in the subspace readings, I replied. It wouldn't be that messy unless there was a lot of activity. I'm talking several times the number that you see under the hostile designation, sir. The tall officer stroked the stubby whiskers on his chin. He paused through the data himself, and his expression grew deadly serious. Urgency flashed in his dark pupils before he signaled our captain. Those predator instincts could draw tactical conclusions much faster than my own. Humans acted before we even determined the problem. Actually, why didn't I have those instincts? Had those reflexes been written out of my genes by Colchian experimenters, or a flesh deficiency? My eyes narrowed before I turned my attention back to the bridge activity. There's a trap! Tyler's skin morphed into a flushing shade of red as blood pooled in his cheeks. Veins bulged from his temples, and his canines were bared in visceral alarm. Captain, look for contacts on our 6. They're hiding out there somewhere. Monahan redirected power to shields before relaying that conclusion to the fleet. The Terran ships undertook a gradual banking maneuver, ignoring bewildered chatter from the Mazics. The captain inspected the nearest astronomical bodies and cross-referenced them with the star charts. After a long pause, she pointed to a rocky planet. There was nothing I saw but a cratered surface. However, at this point, I trusted the Predator's refined instincts. Our commander likely singled it out because that's where she would have hidden a fleet, with the roles reversed. Perhaps empathy wasn't a complete hindrance on the battlefield. Samantha squinted. The attack on Ko is just bait. It's not worth it to subdue a single breakaway species. They want to keep our military crippled and take out the Federation traitors at the same time. As if expressing agreement with her words, an array of ships zipped out from behind the gravimetric body. The Federation must have realized the element of surprise was lost, so that forced a head-on confrontation with the human fleet. Had they really saved an abundance of fresh reinforcements for us? The Predators brought their fleet into a defensive formation as the first munitions were lobbed in our direction. The Kolshians must believe numbers tipped the scales in their favor. The Terrans hadn't held out the last time there was a disproportionate balance. This was a test of whether our rebuilt military could hold a candle to an ancient power. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons: Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Lord Azrakal, Dragzoon W.R.E, Holly Sister, Ambrose Cattell, and Quantum Wednesday. Thank you very much.